Did you know that 69% of people regret buying the car they did? That's because most people underestimate how devious car sellers are. We don't want you to get scammed, which is why we're revealing 15 checks you must perform before buying a used car. These checks are simple, but they can save you as much as $10,000. But stick around for the bonus tip. It's the only protection you have against buying a lemon. Number 15. The Vehicle History Report. When you're buying a used car from a friend, it's always tempting to take them at their word. But don't be gullible. Nobody tells the whole truth, and that's where vehicle history reports come in. So, before you even see the car, get the vehicle identification number and run a vehicle history report. If you're buying a car you want to keep for ages, don't be cheap. Carfax offers the most comprehensive vehicle history reports. AutoCheck costs nearly half as much, but they don't do as great a job. If the seller has something to hide, and they always do, they might say, "Don't waste your money," or they might offer a free report. Hard pass. You can't trust anything from the dealer. They'll get the cheapest and most inaccurate report they can. If you fall for their trap, you could end up buying a car with a branded or salvage title, and that can wreck your finances. But if you get a vehicle report with a buyback guarantee, they'll refund you the full amount if the car was branded and they missed it. Only an idiot will cheap out on $50 only to end up with a $5,000 repair. That being said, even vehicle history reports can contain inaccuracies. That is why these other checks are critical. Number 14. Dive into the car's computer. When you buy a used car, you should listen to the car more than you do the seller. The first conversation you should have is with the car's ECU. For that, you'll need an OBD2 scanner. Plug your scanner into the port, then turn the engine on. You're looking for two things. The first is any pending or stored codes, and the second is the status of the readiness monitors. Sellers expect you to check the ECU, so they'll likely clear all codes before you arrive. They might tell you that the check engine light isn't showing, so no need to check. But don't be fooled. If there are no error codes, it could mean everything is fine, or that the codes were just cleared. The readiness monitor will reveal the truth. If it reads "not ready" or "incomplete," then the car's computer hasn't had time to run its checks. This means the codes have just been cleared, and the owner is trying to hide something. No matter what they say, don't be an idiot. The check engine light might show up a couple of days after you've bought it, and you'll be left holding the bag. You might have to fix failing sensors, or even a failing catalytic converter. That's a $2,500 expense if you're lucky. When you're done with the OBD2 scanner, it's time to go hunting for gremlins. Number 13. Electronics and accessories. Did you know that 24% of cars under 5 years old have non-engine electrical faults? That doesn't even include infotainment systems and sat-navs. That's why you need to check every single one of these. Be meticulous. Start with the windows and the door locks. Then get comfortable with the HVAC. Does it cool and heat up the car? Does air come out of the defroster? Is the sunroof just for show? Or does it actually slide open and close? Also, make sure that the joystick controls the side mirrors. Check the navigation, radio, heated seats, and when you go for a drive, the dashboard warning lights. When it comes to the AC, be wary of when a seller says it only needs a recharge, or if they tell you they never use a particular feature. This means that even though it's busted, you'll never need it. While most electrical gremlins can be fixed in minutes, some can drain your wallet fast. For example, replacing the AC compressor can cost as much as $2,000. Dealers charge as much as $2,500 to fix busted infotainment systems, and that's not even for high-end cars. Some cars are more prone to certain electrical faults than others, including 90% of the cars on this list. Number 12, check for oil leaks and cover-ups. According to the AA, 43% of used cars in the UK have some sort of fluid leak. Because they are such an obvious red flag for buyers, sellers will go to extreme lengths to hide them. That means if you want to know the truth, you have to get down on the ground. For this, you need to jack up the car. Look for wet, greasy grime not just on the floor, but at the bottom of the engine and transmission. While you're down there, make sure the CV joints aren't shredded. Experienced sellers see this coming, so they would steam clean the engine. That's why I say a clean engine bay is a red flag. And if you do see any leaks, they might say, "It's just sweating a little. All older cars do that." Or they'll use the old, "I might have spilled a little when I topped it off." Of all the lies sellers tell to make a sale, you don't want to be the victim of this one. An oil leak is never a good thing. If you're lucky, it's just a valve cover gasket leak, which only costs about $300 to fix. On the other hand, it could be a rear main seal replacement that can cost as much as $1,500. However, the real dangers of oil leaks are engine damage and fires. Even though an oil leak won't necessarily stop you from buying a car, the next thing should. Number 11, check for rust. The last thing you want in a used car is rust. Oil leaks can be fixed. Even a busted engine can be replaced. But severe rust is a ticking time bomb. That's why it's called car cancer. It moves from one area to another, but the real problem is at the bottom. So get on the ground, grab a flashlight, and start checking every inch of the undercarriage. Inspect the frame rails, wheel wells, and the bottoms of the doors. If you see any suspicious spots, poke them with a screwdriver to make sure. If you do find any rust, don't be shocked if the seller tries to spin it as a positive. They might tell you that it's just a little surface rust or that every car has it. Keep an eye out for freshly painted surfaces next to the so-called surface rust. This indicates that the owner has tried to cover up the really nasty bits. That rust will keep spreading underneath, so don't be fooled. Even though rust often takes decades to ruin a car, some drivers aren't that lucky. Rust can compromise the structural integrity of key parts, like your suspension and brake lines. Forget paying thousands of dollars to fix your car. You might be paying a lot more for hospital bills. While the car is up in the air, save yourself from the next deadly mistake. Number 10, check the condition of the tires. Over 11,000 accidents happen each year because of tire failure. So, before you drive a car home, you need to make sure that it will actually get you there. With the front of the car still jacked up, you're going to turn the tires outward. Next, you're going to run your hands over them to check for uneven wear. If the tire is feathered, it could be a bad alignment, and that could point to issues with the suspension. You also want to ensure that the tires are all the same brand. Then, you need to stick a penny in the tire treads. If you can see all of Lincoln's head, it means the tires are gone. Also, inspect the passenger side wheels for curb rash. And if all of the tires are new, the dealer might be trying to hide uneven tire wear, which points to a bigger problem. Sellers don't expect you to know how to inspect tires properly. They might show you receipts to prove that the tires have plenty of life left. Don't take the bait. If you don't check the tires properly, you could end up with 4 baldies. It will cost you at least $800 for 4 good tires, or for just 1 tire if it's an SUV. But if the suspension is bad, you could spend $1,800 on strut replacements. Number 9, check the fluids. Did you know that only 64% of drivers regularly check their oil levels? As crazy as this sounds, it's still much higher than the number of drivers that inspect transmission fluid. Part of the problem is marketing gimmicks that talk about lifetime fluids. All fluids degrade over time. While transmission fluid is more durable than most, it still needs to be replaced on schedule. That's why you need to inspect it yourself. It usually has a yellow handle, like the oil dipstick. Look for a bright red color that doesn't smell burnt. You should also check the engine oil and the brake fluid. If the brake fluid reservoir is low, it means the brakes are worn. If it's too high, then the owner just topped it up to fool you. Of course, they'll deny it and probably try to make you feel like you're doing too much. But remember that fluids are the lifeblood of the engine. For example, if the transmission fluid smells burnt, it means that it is no longer lubricating as it should. This can cause problems like slippage, overheating, and complete transmission failure. This can cost as much as $5,000 to fix. Number 8. Inspect the belts and hoses. Here is another part of the inspection most buyers ignore. Even though belts and hoses are cheap, the damage they cause can be catastrophic. This inspection should be done during the day, outside, and when the engine is cool. Do you see any cracks or fraying? Are there any soft, mushy spots, especially near the clamps? Or does the coolant hose look glassy? These are all signs of impending doom that must be fixed immediately before you buy, or used as a bargaining tool to lower the price. The dealer might try to steer you off by saying, "They look fine to me." They are hoping you don't know how to inspect a belt. But if you take their word, the bank will take your money. For example, if the serpentine belt looks glazed or slick, don't even try to drive it. That belt is about ready to snap. The serpentine belt drives the alternator, AC compressor, the water pump, and the power steering pump. If it snaps, your car will overheat quickly. A blown head gasket or cracked engine blocks aren't cheap repairs. If you're lucky, you might spend roughly $2,000. If not, say bye-bye to your new car or fork out $5,000 plus on a new engine. Bad belts are easy to fix, but the next thing isn't. Number 7. Check the door panels and paint. Did you know that in some states it's not illegal for a dealer to sell a car without disclosing its accident history? That means it is always up to you to find this out for yourself. No matter how good the shop did of fixing Humpty Dumpty, there are always telltale signs. The first thing to look for is uneven panels. Stick your finger in the grooves on opposite sides of the hood and doors to make sure the panel gap is the same. As you walk around the car, you always want to pay attention to the paint and reflections. It is easier to see dents and reflections and when the car is dry. If the paint color looks uneven or the panels are misaligned, the car has been in an accident. But, like I said, don't expect the seller to fess up about panel gaps and mismatched paint. They might say, "That's how the car came. It's a factory defect," which might be true. At the end, I'll share a tip that will protect you from such deception. The dealer knows that selling an accidented car will shave up to 30% off the price. They paid out of pocket to fix it so that it doesn't show up in the vehicle inspection history. Here's a bonus tip. Use a paint gauge meter to check the evenness of the paint. If the paint on top of the car is thicker than usual, it could indicate a rollover. Don't be their sucker. If everything checks out so far, it's almost time for a test drive. First, you need to take a deep breath. Number 6, check for signs of flood damage. If I had to pick between a car that's been in a flood or an accident, I'd always choose the accidented car. That's because most of the damage would be visible and easy to diagnose. Flooded cars, on the other hand, are silent killers. Get close to the carpet and take a deep breath. If you smell mold, must, or mildew, walk away immediately. However, the seller might try to overwhelm your nose by using strong air fresheners, but be smarter. Lift up a corner of the carpet and look for silt, dirt, or rust. If you see rust on screw heads under the dash or seats, run. Another telltale sign is condensation inside the headlights and taillights. Side note, this test is also compulsory for all Land Rovers. due to their history of leaky sunroofs. One unlucky buyer spent $20,000 trying to fix the damage to the electrics from rain damage. As bad as that was, flooded cars will do much worse. The car will have you chasing ghosts for years. Meanwhile, rust will consume your car from the inside. By the time you know it, there will be nothing to salvage. Number 5. Check the exhaust. You've been very patient so far, and now it's time to turn on the engine. Or rather, have the person you went with do that for you. Stand at the back of the car and have them rev up the engine. Pay attention to the color and the smell of the smoke. White smoke is normal, especially in cold weather. However, if it's thick and has a sweet smell, it could mean there's a coolant leak in the combustion chamber. This happens when there is a blown head gasket, cracked engine block, or some other nightmare in the engine. Blue smoke means engine oil is leaking into the combustion chamber. Black smoke could indicate the engine is burning too much fuel and the injectors are bad. Finally, gray smoke is a sign of oil burning or severe problems with the transmission. Ignore the seller if they tell you it's just a little smoke when the engine starts. That little smoke from a blown head gasket can cost up to $4,000, whereas replacing the engine block could be as much as $10,000. That might cost more than the car you're buying. As expensive as this is, ignoring the last tip will cost you even more than that. But before then, let's move to the front of the car. Number 4, listen to the engine. If you're an experienced driver, then you know that cars always talk before something bad happens. That's why you need to pop the hood back open and have your friend start the engine. Listen for any unusual sounds. Hissing, ticking, squealing, whining, and sputtering are all signs of imminent and often expensive problems. They could indicate anything from oil or coolant leaks to a loose serpentine belt, or even a failing transmission. If it's a diesel, make sure you do an engine blow-by test. Here is where it's important to bring someone along who also knows cars. The seller will try to convince you that you're not hearing right. Or they might say, the engine has always made that sound. You know what? They might be right, which will prove that they also don't know much about cars, and you shouldn't take their advice. If you don't know what a failing differential sounds like, pay for a pre-purchase inspection. That $200 will prevent you from making a $6,000 mistake. You're still going to do more tests with the engine during the test drive. But before you do, there's yet another deal breaker. Number 3, check the maintenance records. Did you know that poor maintenance shortens a car's lifespan by at least 50,000 miles? According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, the average car lasts 145,000 miles before it gets scrapped. However, engines are built to last at least 200,000 miles. If you follow my tips, you could even get yours past 500,000 miles. Make sure you go over the maintenance records and check the receipts meticulously because sellers lie. This will give you a clearer picture of how healthy the vehicle is. Ensure that the oil is changed regularly using the right oil at the right intervals. If it's an old car, ensure that the timing belt was changed on time. Another very important one to check is the transmission fluid change. Some owners believe that it will last forever, so they never change it. The seller might try to convince you that it's a lifetime fluid, but that's a myth. Also, be aware of lies like, "I did all the maintenance myself," or "I lost the records." That is a clear sign that they didn't do it. Buying a car with incomplete maintenance records is a huge gamble. For example, if the transmission hasn't been taken care of, it has a 60% chance of failing. You're looking at between $1,800 and $6,000 to get out of that mess. So, unless you're getting the car at half the price, it's not worth the risk. Number 2, check the brakes and engine performance. As exciting as it is to get behind the wheel, this isn't a joyride. The purpose of the test is to listen to the car and discover things the dealer might be trying to hide from you. Don't let the seller speak to you or put on the radio while you drive. You already tested the radio previously, and they've already told you everything you need to know. Now, it's time to listen to the car. You need to drive 10 minutes in town and at least 10 miles on the highway. Listen for any buzzing, humming, or ticking noises. Does the transmission shift easily? And does the car stay straight? How responsive are the brakes at highway speeds? What does it feel like going over a speed bump? When you're done with the road test, don't allow the seller to gaslight you. Trust your instincts. A noisy engine is not the same thing as road noise. And if the driver assistance features didn't work, that's a major problem. Before you end the inspection, make sure you don't fall for this scam. Number 1, confirm the odometer reading. According to NHTSA, odometer fraud costs buyers $1 billion every year. Sellers know that by rolling back the dial, they can make a killing. Kelley Blue Book estimates that cars lose 16 cents per mile in depreciation for the first 150,000 miles. Afterwards, it drops down to $0.046. This means that if someone claims a car has done 120,000 miles instead of 150,000, you will lose $4,800. So, compare the odometer readings on the vehicle history report with the dashboard. If the wear and tear doesn't match the mileage, pass. Newer cars should have original parts. That's a dead giveaway. The seller will try to convince you that the odometer readings are real. Don't be fooled. Not only will you lose money on the transaction, but you'll also spend much more on repairs. If everything checks out so far, there is one more thing you need to do. Bonus: the biggest mistake you can make. Always research the car itself. Find out if there are any common problems with that particular model year. If there were any recalls, check the vehicle history to make sure the required upgrades were made. Even if the brand itself is reliable, it doesn't mean they didn't mess up that particular model. Call local parts stores to ask if there have been any orders for that type of car and how much. You can also watch our videos to find out which cars are worth your money and which ones will leave you stranded. If you follow all 16 tips in this video, it would be impossible for you to be on that list. To make your next purchase even easier, have a look at top 13 cars that simply never break down.